This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
How do some painters achieve world fame? Vincent van Gogh's secret was an excursion to Provence. In 1888, he flees from the haze and hoi polloi of Paris to the French countryside. Oh, this light! It flows like oil over the olive groves into every single one of his synapses. Van Gogh is now like his red hair, on fire. In the following 15 months, he kindles a firework of ideas and completes over 300 paintings. That's one groundbreaking piece of work every 36 hours. Amongst these, Starry Night and Sunflowers. Before his morning coffee, casually complete a masterpiece, some furrows, which were recently auctioned off at $81 million. Well, workation has always been a good idea. How about a trip to Marseille?
Book a workation now with the airlines of the Lufthansa Group.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds, owner and user of Mint Mobile. And I am recording this message on my phone. I'm literally on my Mint phone. Why? Because fancy recording studios cost money. And if we spent money on things like that, we couldn't offer you screaming deals. Like if you sign up now for 3 months, you get 3 months free on every one of your plans, even unlimited. Visit mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time new customer offer. Activate within 45 days. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. Unlimited customers using more than 40 gigabytes per month will experience lower speeds. Video streams at 480p. See mintmobile.com for details.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
It is the last episode of the food programme for 2023, and I don't know if you have any plans for tonight, but if not, allow us to whet your appetite. Perhaps after listening to today's episode, you might feel inspired to embrace a food tradition from around the world and cook something to mark the occasion. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Will you be using food to mark the turn of the year today? Will you be cooking up a feast for many, or perhaps preparing something special just for yourself? For lots of us, the arrival of a new year is a time for gathering, for ritual, and for reflection. And of course, food can play a huge role in these customs. I'm Leyla Kazim, and today we are taking you on a culinary journey around the world to hear stories of food traditions that mark New Year's Eve. From eating lentils in Italy.
Pretty much in the whole of Italy, prosperity comes with lentils, which represent coins, the symbolism of them.
To scoffing 12 grapes in Spain with the 12 dongs of midnight. So my full concentration was on the eating of the grapes. And then you said, don't forget your wishes. I'm like, oh my God. Haven't even, no thought has actually crossed my mind other than to keep eating the grapes in time. To slurping soba noodles in Japan. That's the sound effect we wanted, Reiko.
So the people, just hope, wish to become strong and resilient,
And celebrating with Kransekage in Denmark and Norway.
Jump off the chair, hug your friends, kiss your husband and wife and whatever, and then eat cake.
I hope that today's programme is going to get you in the mood to rustle up something special and reflect on what food traditions are most important to you at this time of year.
I think with New Year, it's a moment when the country comes together as a country, as a nation, as an entity, when everyone is doing more or less the same thing, popping a champagne cork. And champagne is an imported product. It's a French luxury, but somehow the entire world is doing it. So we don't just come together as a country, we come together as a world in this ritual. And some of these rituals are extremely recent. And some of them go back to pagan times, and they're being transported and transplanted onto the new year. A tradition is something that brings together a group of people over a repeated ritual. And yes, it can be personal tradition, it can be family tradition, but New Year somehow evolved into a public holiday in so many places. These rituals bring us together, and they're overlaid with your personal nostalgia, with the national nostalgia. There's just so many layers of emotions and nostalgic feelings that go through us when we do something again and again and again.
That's Anya Von Bremzen, author of National Dish, who I'll be speaking to later in the programme. On New Year's Eve, in many cultures, people eat food that represents luck, longevity and prosperity for the coming year.
I think I can say pretty much with confidence that most Italians will have lentils around on New Year's Eve. They would have a pan of lentils on the stove that maybe had been made many hours before, sort of almost solid. You'd go and you'd have spoonfuls.
I had a chat with Rachel Roddy, food writer and cookbook author based in Rome, all about the Italian tradition of eating lentils on New Year's Eve.
Pretty much in the whole of Italy, prosperity comes with lentils, which represent coins, the symbolism of them. I mean, the word, doesn't it, in the Greek and Roman is from lens, but again, that little small round shape. But over the centuries, it became associated with abundance, because not only are they small and round, they're numerous.
So do you know when this tradition started? How old is it?
Well, I suppose we could trace it back, and again, this is very amateur historian, but we could trace it back to the sort of ancient Rome, and there's a lot of symbolism around food. Legumes were precious, they were plentiful, so I wonder whether it can be traced back then, but certainly the Middle Ages, when we see the rites and rituals around meals occurring. But it's something that's certainly been going on for centuries in Italy. And I repeat, like meeting other ingredients too, so my partner is Sicilian, so there's quite a lot of symbolism around small round foods at New Year. Raisins, dried fruit, nuts. The way I understand it is that it is common all over Italy. As I say, often in the north, there's a lot of symbolism around rice. At New Year on New Year's Eve, often in Lombardia, for example, people might eat risotto. Friuli as well, I think there's lots of symbolism around rice. And actually I have friends from the north who will, to sort of double their chances, will rice and lentils together. We could even do a rice lentil grape dinner.
Yeah, you've got all bases covered. You'll have the best year you've ever had.
I think I can say pretty much with confidence that most Italians will have lentils around on New Year's Eve. And even when we come back to England now, I will at some point cook lentils. I don't know, just to be sure. Often New Year is often a sort of potluck meal. So often lots of friends together and family, so that the meal, often I've found, will be many things. Probably less formal than Christmas, for example, or New Year. Italians generally eat quite late, but also particularly on New Year's Eve, because you're all hoping to stay awake until midnight. I have difficulty these days. Alternatively, the meal will be eaten, but then there will be a pot of lentils on the stove in preparation for midnight. I do know quite a lot of Italians and non-Italians who do really, really eat them as the dongs are donging. I cook with all sorts of lentils, the brown and green lentils. I mean, I'm pretty easygoing. And typical ways to serve the lentils, so braised, they can be braised very simply, just in water with a bay leaf or with a carrot and onion and celery, and then served often with sausage. So typically that could be cotechino, which is a large pork boiling sausage. So I will often either cook the sausages in with the lentils, or if I've got vegetarians, I'll cook the lentils, braise them in one big pan, and then either pan fry some sausages or do them under the grill.
We tend to associate Italians with having a really deep connection to their food culture. How do Italians keep these traditions going?
I think a combination of factors. It is so vast and regional. There's historical patterns, the closeness to an agricultural life, the sort of later industrialisation. I mean, Italy's only been a unified country since 1861, so that unifying, that making of a whole country, and then that sort of growing awareness of people becoming aware of Italy as a whole, and then their regional patterns. It's a fascinating and complex set of circumstances. I'm also very, very aware of my ability to romanticise things. How do we keep up traditions? We do them, we're really sort of good at that everywhere, aren't we? I mean, children are great at that, aren't they? Take a child for an ice cream on the way home from the dentist and they will expect that that's a tradition forever here on in. And I see it everywhere more now, how good we are at finding patterns that reassure. And food, of course, is the best one.
Rachel Roddy speaking to us from her apartment in Rome, where today there will be a pan of warming lentils on her stove. For our next food tradition, we are heading over to Spain, which has a New Year's Eve ritual I've heard is a pretty big deal.
Hola amigos, my name is Omar Allibhoy. I'm a Spanish chef. I write cookery books I do Spanish cookery classes and all sorts of things, as long as they are Spanish.
So with New Year's Eve, I have read that one of the traditions in Spain is to eat 12 grapes.
It is absolutely true. And it's probably and culturally the most celebrated activation in the whole year. You know, independently of what religion you are, which family you come from, we all have 12 grapes in the last sort of 20 seconds, I think it lasts, of the year. And it's for good luck. You need to wish 12 wishes, and hopefully over the next 12 months they become a reality.
So we're in Spain, we're at your home,
yes.
Family home. It's approaching midnight, and so I guess everyone has eaten a meal.
You know, in Spain we eat quite late.
Yes,
so
late.
What generally happens is that we haven't finished the meal and somebody starts shouting, "It's 11:45, get ready!" And then we all have to go to the kitchen, bring the grapes. Some choose to de-seed them because you'll see it's easy to choke.
Stroke of midnight.
No. And we sort of get into a bit of a hectic mood. You go at the pace of the dongs. You need to pick your grapes carefully. In every city, in every village, there'll be a church, or in the case of Madrid, where I come from, it happens in Puerta del Sol, which are the most famous and the ones that you can see on TV. And there is a big tower with the bell.
I guess people would gather around the town clock and eat the grapes sort of with each other communally.
Together. This is a tradition that it's engraved in our culture.
Now, I think it would have been a bit of a missed opportunity not to have had a go at the 12 grapes. So I brought along a bunch of the smallest ones I could find, and Omar completed the scene with an old video of the crowd at the Puerta del Sol in Madrid that is watched on TV in homes all over Spain every year. This is quite fast. I haven't said one wish.
I lost the track. I'm not sure if I'm going one before and after.
And this is without any cava. Imagine if we had cava. Oh my God. You've still got two!
I lost track!
Oh my
hilarious. God. And it's Happy New Year, bam, with a bit of confetti, a few things, and tears, always tears, because then we wish each other the very best from the bottom of our hearts. That's and so it's nice. Always emotional.
And the grape sellers have just earned a great little living for that day. I mean,
obviously, like in all aspects of life, there is convenience. So you will find 12 grapes packaged in a little plastic glass with a lid. Those are there for those who are single at home, maybe, or if you are traveling or working, obviously, you're a security guard or you are in an ambulance. As long as you can breathe, you are eating grapes. That's how serious this stuff is.
It's quite difficult.
It's an experience, and that's why. And you lose track, and then it's really fun because you see your grandmother is, just doing her best, and the whole experience is quite surreal.
Omar Allibhoy. With a lot of these well-established rituals around food, it's easy to think that they've been deep-rooted in a country's national heritage for hundreds of years. But as is the case with the grapes in Spain, some of these national food traditions were actually invented fairly recently. And what better person to help me peel back the layers of how we understand them than Anya Von Bremzen, a Russian-born culinary writer whose latest book, National Dish Around the World in Search of Food, History and the Meaning of Home, unpicks the world's culinary cultures to reveal all is not always as it seems.
Well, I think there's so many forces that create these traditions. And I know that you're looking at the grapes in Spain, which is really fun, and I've done it myself. Supposedly that tradition goes back to early 20th century when the grape producers of southern Spain had a great harvest and they didn't know what to do with it, and they started packaging them just almost as a souvenir, as 12 grapes for the 12 months, so you can make 12 wishes. At least that's one interpretation, because some Spanish historians actually have found earlier mentions dating to the 1880s to possibly some raucous Roddy students going back to Plaza del Sol and just popping grapes, at the 12 chimes of the clock. So no one knows, but you're talking about something that's barely a century old.
That's so interesting. So when it comes to these specific examples of eating particular foods as part of New Year's celebrations, why do you think the traditions have lasted so long? What's helping them to stick around?
I think commercial forces, because so many of these traditions are overlaying pagan rituals, fertility rituals, sun rituals onto modern commercialism and modern commodification of everything from grapes to champagne. The sense that you're sharing something with a lot of people around you. It's important for us to cohere as people as we become especially more and more individualistic. I would love to give you an example from my own history and from my own country, how these traditions are just so invented and what happens to them. So I was born in the USSR, in the Soviet Union. And in the Soviet Union, when the Bolsheviks came to power after the revolution, Christmas was banned because religion was banned. But in the 1930s, about 20 years on, there was a sense that people made a lot of sacrifice for this great experiment, for that changed the history of the country and the lives of the people. And one of Stalin's bloodier henchmen decided, why don't we give Russian children a New Year's, a Christmas tree and all the presents, but they transplanted all the Christmas rituals to the New Year. And the entire country was eating a salad, a diced potato, pea and mayonnaise salad called salade Olivier. That is derived from a 19th century dish, but became like a more frugal version. The ritual across the 11 time zones of the USSR and its 15 ethnic republics, from Ukraine to Uzbekistan to Estonia, was to eat salade Olivier, to pop a champagne. That was a ritual when we immigrated, and so many people immigrated. And when the Soviet Union fell apart, we still kept eating salade Olivier, because it was part of our traditions, it was part of our lives. But then the war in Ukraine happened. And the Ukrainians started questioning, why do we need these Soviet dishes and Soviet rituals? And there was a lot of public debate about de-Sovietizing and decommunizing Ukrainian cuisine. So a lot of Ukrainians rejected salade Olivier, as did we, because we're so anti-Putin, we're so anti-war. For the first time last year, I told my mom, you know what, I don't want to share a ritual with people who are invading another country. So for the first time in our lives, literally as far as I can remember, we didn't have a salad. And we rejected the tradition because we rejected being part of that culture. So this is how things change. But it also was a loss of something. I felt like, one has very complex feelings about it.
Isn't that interesting how things kind of remain almost out of habit and tradition until people step back and question, why is it that we're actually doing this? What's the origins of this? Oh, maybe this isn't something we want to do anymore. Do you think that food can still play a role in affirming our identities and our sort of place in the world?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's ambiguous. So food brings us together. Food also divides us, but food is always at the center of what we do because it's basic sustenance. It involves family rituals. It's so much more than just what we put in our mouths. There's just so much there. And now with social media, obsessing over food, it sort of stokes it, and it stokes those traditions that might be invented.
So, Anya, do you have any New Year's traditions to do with food? What do you tend to cook or serve or eat on the 31st of December?
My New Year's table is a mishmash of everything that brings luck. Especially, I started doing it during the pandemic when we all needed luck so much. I always do the 12 grapes. And it was a new year, and I was in Plaza del Sol, and I thought it's such a fun tradition, and I just keep doing it. Also, I do the Chinese thing. I always serve noodles for long life. Yeah, and the New Year's Day, I usually do some kind of lentil or bean dish to symbolize, again, prosperity. And then we have the Russian New Year, which is on the 13th because we have a different calendar. And on the 6th, there's a Spanish Three Kings Day. So I usually celebrate from Christmas to the 13th of January. There's always something.
How fabulous.
It's a pleasure to chat with you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, my goodness. Now it's over to Japan. You might associate Japanese cuisine with rice-based dishes, sushi, or those lovely thick, chewy udon noodles made from wheat. But on New Year's Eve, it's soba noodles that carry special cultural significance. Pure soba is made from buckwheat flour and water, and that's it. Buckwheat is actually a seed rather than a grain, and it has a strong, almost nutty flavour. It's loaded with nutrients, it's richer in protein and antioxidants than wheat and rice. And because it doesn't contain any gluten, making soba noodles by hand is really difficult. And it's developed into a traditional art in Japan. In the UK, you can only find the dried noodles, and they're often a mix of wheat and buckwheat. Reiko Hashimoto is the founder of Hashi Japanese Cookery School in Wimbledon and the author of 3 Japanese cookbooks. We met in Chisu, izakaya in central London, to talk all things soba.
In our house, we tend to have a sort of a little bit extravagant meal on New Year's Eve. So it's a bit like our Christmas Eve here. Close to midnight, my mother asks what kind of soba noodles you want to eat. We hear the bells starting, and then we all eat soba noodles and then say, Happy New Year. So the people, just hope, wish to become strong and resilient here.
So what was the history of the buckwheat noodles? How did they come to be?
This is quite interesting. I thought soba noodle is a very traditional Japanese noodle. But really back in Jomon period, a long, long time ago, it actually landed from China. Like a lot of things in Japan. Like ramen noodles with the white flour and the egg noodles. Buckwheat flour also came from China a long time ago, but then it wasn't formed as a soba noodles. And then Japanese started to, like lots of things, make a little tweak and then created soba noodles. And they have been eating for over 400 years now. So the reason why buckwheat noodles, the soba noodles on New Year's Eve, so noodles in general, it's long. It's sort of symbolizing longevity. But also why soba noodles? So because soba noodle is brittle, it's easy to cut. Japanese noodles always, we cut, not stretching. The Chinese noodles, they stretch to make it sort of like a thread. So New Year's Eve soba noodle is called toshikoshi soba. Toshikoshi means over the year, just stepping over the period. So easy to cut off the noodles. That means, you just sort of cut the year and then just welcome the new year as well.
Gosh, so different layers of the symbolism from one such a simple noodle.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great. Is there a particular way you would eat the noodles as part of the New Year's?
It doesn't matter what form. Cold soba noodles is very popular, but because it's the season, it's very cold time. Soba noodle soup is always dashi base and simply soy sauce, little mirin, sake. So it's quite sort of straightforward. But the topping can be anything.
All this noodle chat, and I'm absolutely gasping to try some.
Sumimasen. Fabulous. Yes, so we've got 2 bowls of broth with soba in and different toppings. Those are hot soups. And then we've also got 2 cold soba dishes where we've got a pile of noodles, like dried, with a pot of dipping sauce. So, Reiko, tell me if I'm doing this right. So just dip it in, take it out, and then I guess slurp it, right?
Yes.
I'm a bad Japanese. Okay. I'm not slurping properly.
I don't do that because I'm too westernized.
Right.
But I'll show you.
You know how to do it.
I know how to do it. I'll show you.
Go ahead. Oh, that's the sound effect we wanted, Reiko. They taste good.
Very al dente.
Yeah.
I'm going to imagine that this is New Year's Eve. and we're both in Kyoto together, experiencing New Year's Eve with all these beautiful soba.
Yes, it's fantastic. I mean, now seeing these sobas in front of me, it's really nice. It sort of brings back the memories. For me, I feel soba represent Japanese noodles, for me, because it's unique as well. So some people take it very seriously. So in Japan, I think younger generations, I believe majority of people do eat soba noodles. You know, it's a bit like here, Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Even the young generation, they do stick with the traditions. It's always nice, sort of nostalgic memory.
Reiko Hashimoto. So after all that incredible food at your New Year's celebration, I think it's time for something sweet. And in Denmark and Norway, the Kransekage is what takes centre stage. It's a cone-shaped, multi-tiered celebration cake made up of concentric rings of almonds, sugar and egg whites. Sometimes it's over a couple of feet tall and it is quite a sight to behold. Here's Brontë Aurell, food writer and co-founder of ScandiKitchen in London, who grew up with these cakes in Denmark.
So it's kransekage in Danish, or kransekage in Norwegian. It means ring cake. Krans means ring, and kake or kage means cake. It's very simple. We're quite simple people, logic, you know. In Denmark, this is a huge deal on New Year's Eve. We don't eat it as a dessert. It's a cake we have at midnight as the clock strikes 12. Also, Norwegian people might eat it at midnight for New Year as well. However, Norwegians eat this cake a lot for Norwegian National Day in May, 17th of May. And we all have this cake, you know, for big celebrations, christenings, weddings, big birthdays and so on.
Why is it regarded as a celebration cake and why is it eaten at New Year's?
It was invented in Denmark in the later bit of the 1700s when marzipan started coming in from, you know, exotic places abroad and made its way up to the cold north. And so it was never a cake that you could sort of just whip up on a Sunday afternoon and enjoy with coffee. First of all, it's hard to make. And second of all, it's expensive. So once invented, it took this kind of place as a very special cake.
Set the scene for me and our listeners. So it's New Year's Eve. We're in Denmark, in someone's family home.
Hopefully by the time that you have your kransekage, you will have finished eating. Just before the clock strikes 12, we have the champagne ready, and then you will find most Danes will be standing on a chair, which sounds a bit strange. But that's a huge tradition because we jump into the new year. Jump off the chair, hug your friends, kiss your husband and wife and whatever, and then eat cake.
I'm so delighted to share that I have with me right now a kransekage.
Beautiful.
Isn't it pretty?
It is so gorgeous, but it's very sweet. You need a cup of coffee or something else with it to enjoy it.
So this was made by an amazing baker, Jenny, of Kransekage UK. Oh, okay, so the texture is not what I was expecting. I thought it might be hard and brittle, but it's soft. And I'm going to try some. It's delicious. It is sweet. Almondy. It's kind of a bit like marzipan.
So you can make it either by using extremely finely ground almonds. We cheat and we buy the marzipan. And you cannot make it with marzipan that is readily available in the UK because it has too high sugar content. It's mainly 25% that you get here. We make it with marzipan that's 63% almond.
And so would people attempt to make this themselves or would they generally buy it?
Generally buy it. But you can. I made one with 40 rings once. That took a long time for a big party. They made it on Bake Off a few years ago.
Oh, really?
As the technical challenge. And it was quite fun to see the interpretation of this particular cake, especially when you're looking at it from a very traditional point of view. We would never, ever use anything but white icing. It is a very pretty cake and it's white icing only. It's Scandinavian minimalist, right? But in Bake Off, they had green icing, red icing, glitter, and, you know, and all my fellow Scandinavians were looking at it going, why would you do this? But that's the beauty of being in a different country and seeing some goods from your home country being interpreted. I think it's beautiful to see how other people might eat something. See my children interpreting the recipes I put in my book. And then they go, well, wouldn't it make sense to do it like this and to change it like that? And I go, no, because that's not how my mum did it. And they go, but it makes sense just because your mum did it like, you know, and they're much more free to change things and to make it better. And I think that's how food culture develops. Memory and food and taste is really closely linked in the brain. So I think we also try to part with our culture and our traditions through food. It's not just a language, it's also food traditions are really important in order to teach our children about our heritage.
Brontë Aurell. I hope that has got you in the mood for cooking or baking something a bit special today. So finally from me and everyone else at the food programme, we wish you a very happy New Year.
At age 30, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is at a crossroads in his life. The aristocracy of snobby Salzburg have turned their noses up at the composer, and the Archbishop dismisses Mozart from his position with a kick in the butt. He escapes to Prague. The second his carriage drives through the city gates, Mozart overhears a young boy whistle the melody of his very own Figaro. This Mozart mania opens all his creative valves. The scores flow out like beer from the taps of the city taverns. Practice made Mozart a virtuoso. Vitality made him the creator of Don Giovanni, the opera of all operas. The poet Lorenzo da Ponte composed its lyrics from the hotel opposite, sending them to Mozart's desk via paper airplane. Well, workation has always been a good idea. How about a trip to Prague?
Book a workation now with the airlines of the Lufthansa Group.
The BBC Good Food podcast with me, Tom Kerridge, is back. Make sure to tune in every Tuesday and Thursday for our brand new episodes each week. So join me for great stories, brilliant laughs, and even better cooking tips by subscribing now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, or wherever you get your podcasts.